As the Irish government moves to stamp out so-called misinformation, we should do well to remember that these are the same politicians that even want to ban true content that they find personally embarrassing. This is Ben Scallan and you're watching Gript Media. Before we start the video, if you want to support Gript and our work, make sure to click like, subscribe and comment, because by liking, commenting and sharing, this channel will get boosted in the algorithm and get seen by more people. And so with that said, on to the video. Listen up people, the Irish government is on a recruitment drive. They're setting up a new Spec Ops Delta Force Elite Action Man Power Ranger team to tackle the biggest problem facing Ireland today. And what is that problem, you ask? Well, no, it's not the drug gangs who dismember teenagers and leave their decapitated, chopped up remains strewn across several counties. No, it's not the fact that half the country is staring down the barrel of energy poverty. It's not even the fact that house prices are continuing to rise further and further out of reach to where many young people may never realistically own their own home. No, it may actually be worse than all of that combined. The real danger facing this country, according to the government, is people on the internet saying things that Irish politicians don't think is true. As reported by The Independent this week, government sets up group to counter spread of false and harmful material. A group tasked with fighting misinformation and disinformation has been set up by the government in a bid to reduce the spread of false and harmful material. While the group is not the government's direct response to recent anti-immigration protests and the spread of anti-immigration sentiments online, it is a part of a state strategy to combat false information as a whole. The strategy will examine evolving threats, types of misinformation and disinformation, and consider how they can be targeted. Well, God help us, that does sound dangerous in fairness now. A granny in Roscommon posting something that's not 100% accurate on Telegram? Well, that's definitely a threat that needs targeting by the state. In fact, I don't even know if the Garda Armed Response Unit will cut it for this one, lads. I think we might need to get America on the phone and call in the Navy SEALs or something. Truly terrifying stuff. Now, of course, the problem here is that in order to ban so-called misinformation, you have to know categorically what the truth is yourself. And last time I checked, the government aren't omniscient celestial deities with access to all knowledge in the universe. They don't have a crystal ball. They rely entirely on experts, many of whom contradict themselves every 5 minutes, depending on which way the wind is blowing. For example, here's Professor Luke O'Neill in February of 2020 telling us all how masks are utterly useless unless you yourself are infected with COVID.
If you're not infected, no reason to wear a face mask. 2 reasons. One, people fidget with it anyway, you know. And secondly, it goes in through the eyes as well. It's an evil virus. It'll penetrate the eyes, and that's not covered anyway, you know. So there's no evidence that wearing a face mask will protect you at all. The main reason is to stop you spreading it, which is very important.
Yeah.
To stop it going to the
But
community.
there's no need, if you don't have this.
No, there's no need to wear a face mask. Absolutely not.
At all.
At all.
Meanwhile, here is Luke O'Neill in September of that same year, just a few months later, saying literally the exact opposite.
So what it's all about is, it turns out if you're wearing a mask, now we know masks work. I mean, the evidence is the scientific evidence is so compelling now. Anybody who denies masks, show me the scientific evidence against it, because the evidence on the other side is so strong. And now they're saying, look, there's something else about masks that might actually promote immunity.
If you're not convinced and you'd like more examples of experts doing U-turns and getting things blatantly wrong, just look at almost every modelling prediction ever made by Neffit. Those lads couldn't have been more wrong if they tried, as outlined in this article. They made factual errors like it was a sport. They were the grand poobahs of getting things wrong. And the HSE even used and abused misinformation labelling systems on social media throughout the pandemic. For example, as Gript's Gary Kavanagh revealed in this article on Twitter, the HSE reported material from The Hill, Politico, ABC, The New York Times, The New York Post, Reuters, the British Medical Journal, and many more outlets as so-called misinformation. And obviously Gript was included on that list as well, as you can well imagine. And why were these outlets flagged to social media by the HSE, you might ask? Well, because many of them reported that there may be some link, in some cases, between blood clotting and the you-know-what. This, according to the HSE, was harmful so-called misinformation, except of course the European Medicines Agency has since confirmed that this was actually true, and yet the HSE at the time confidently labelled it misinfo because they didn't agree with it at that precise moment. So if even scientists can get major policy decisions wrong in their own field of expertise, then how exactly is the government going to know what's misinformation and what isn't? And all of this, by the way, is assuming that they're acting in good faith and even trying to get things right. Because after all, this is the same government that wants to censor true info that it finds embarrassing. Last year, everyone saw the now infamous video allegedly showing Fine Gael leader Leo Varadkar kissing a man in a nightclub. Now, I didn't talk about that at the time because I don't really care about it that much. What politicians do or don't do in their personal lives is generally boring to me and not that relevant to their policies. I'd much rather talk about the government's plans which directly impact our lives rather than some guy's alleged infidelity. It was stupid and tedious when the Irish media constantly went after Donald Trump for his alleged personal failings, and I think that this is pretty tiresome as well for the same reason. That's just my opinion. But whatever you thought of that Varadkar video, I think everyone can agree that there was no reasonable basis for censoring it, which is exactly what Micheál Martin proposed after its release, as reported by the Indo. New era of strict social media rules is now imminent, says Micheál Martin in the wake of Leo Varadkar video. Taoiseach Micheál Martin has warned that a new era of stricter rules around social media is imminent. He was speaking in the wake of the controversy surrounding Leo Varadkar being covertly recorded in a nightclub. In an interview with the Indo Daily podcast, Mr. Martin condemned the intrusion into Mr. Varadkar's private life, saying what happened was a breach of privacy fundamentally. Now, in what possible dimension is a nightclub considered a private place? You're in a room with hundreds of absolute strangers. It's not like somebody peeked into Varadkar's window and filmed him through the curtains in his own home or something. If you go to a nightclub or a pub and you do something, you know that it's going to be seen by other people by definition. I'm not saying that he'd ever do this, and I'm sure he wouldn't, but if hypothetically Micheál Martin had been filmed making out with some woman who wasn't his wife at a nightclub, the public would obviously have a right to comment on that, because he would have made it public by doing it in a public forum. You notice that when British Health Secretary Matt Hancock got caught having an affair in 2021, the Irish media was more than happy to report on that case, as you can see here. Nobody said that it was a breach of privacy then. So this so-called breach of privacy line is just total nonsense on its face, and this is where things start to take a slightly more sinister turn. As the Independent's article with Micheál Martin continues, a video was posted on the social media platform TikTok of Mr. Varadkar in a nightclub and was viewed millions of times before it was removed. Mr. Martin said that he believed society had not fully worked out what impact the social media would have on our lives or on public debate and politics. I think we are now entering into a new era where there'll be far more regulation of social media platforms, he added. So a politician is allegedly caught on camera supposedly being unfaithful to their partner, i.e. one of the most classic political scandals in human history. We all know about cases like Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, and that's just one prominent modern example. These things have been happening since the dawn of time. And so this video gets shared on social media and viewed millions of times by the public, and the government's reaction is to censor social media going forward to prevent people from seeing this type of info. And note that Varadkar himself never denied the video's authenticity. Nobody in government has claimed that it's fake or that it's doctored or anything. So literally the only reason they want it removed is that they find it embarrassing. We now live in a country where the government openly wants to censor information, not because it's false, but because it makes them look bad. And these are the people who want to be given the right to decide what constitutes hate speech under law. These are the people who want to decide what is misinformation and control our national discourse. Yeah, I don't think so. And this line from Micheál Martin in the Indo article was particularly telling as well. The Taoiseach said that he read some of the online comments about him and his government from a research perspective and to investigate where certain lines of attack were coming from. I'm interested in going through some of the commentary to see where they're coming from. Is that a far-right kind of trend? Who's engineering it? It seems like a lot of the reactions can be engineered, he added. So apparently the only reason you would ever want to give negative commentary on Micheál Martin and his government is if you're a far-right individual and being quote-unquote engineered, whatever that means. This reminds me of comments a while back by the leader of the Shannon Fine Gael Senator Regina Doherty, who said that insulting politicians online, quote, needs to stop.
A number of colleagues have talked today about the abuse And I can only say what feels like it has gone from maybe third level or third gear, maybe into sixth gear of politicians at every level. Even political sympathisers and supporters seem to now think it's fair game to give their tuppence worth to our elected representatives. The discourse is available on a daily basis on all of our social media channels. It's now in our inboxes, and it has to stop. We talked here a number of weeks ago about trying to encourage more women into national life, into public life, to encourage more younger people into public life. You'd want to be absolutely off your bloody rocker to encourage any of our children to come into this life and to have to put up with the abuse that we have to put up with on a daily basis. But the only people that are going to change it is us, and we need to do something about it. And I think that needs to start with the debate with the Minister for Justice in the next couple of weeks that I will organise.
Have you ever heard such staggering elitism in your life? It goes without saying that nobody should threaten politicians. Obviously, you shouldn't threaten anyone, but you know that's not what she's talking about here, because at the end she mentioned that she's reaching out to the Justice Minister to deal with it, presumably to draft some new legislation. But threats are already a crime under Irish law. Obviously, if someone is threatening you as a public official, you can just call the police. So she can't be talking about threats here and must instead be referring to insults and criticism, as in people emailing their local representative to tell them that they're a useless bollocks and they've ruined the country or something along those lines. Now, do I support people being gratuitously offensive to politicians? Well, no, I don't. I've been on the receiving end of plenty of abuse and it's never pleasant. But at the end of the day, that's what you sign up for as a public figure. That's called free speech and living in a free society. Being able to tell the leader of your country that they're an idiot and not get a visit from the secret police because you dared to criticize the dear leader. Whatever you think of his politics, and I don't think much, Arnold Schwarzenegger had a great take on this when he was running for governor of California and a protester hit him with an egg.
But just because you're a megastar doesn't mean everyone's pleased to see you.
About this reaction, you got hit by an egg. What do you think of it?
Well, this guy owes me bacon now. I mean, there's no two ways about it, because, I mean, you can't just have eggs without bacon. But this is just all part of, you know, the free speech. I think it's great. You see these people here screaming out. Imagine you're in some communist state or in some dictatorship. You couldn't do that. That's why I love this country. And you have to take the whole package when you love something. I think that California is great. I think America is great. Everyone can speak out. Everyone has freedom of speech. That's what creates the ultimate of democracy. So I believe in that, and I welcome that.
Now, I'm not a big Arnold fan, and I don't agree that hitting people with eggs falls under free speech. Obviously, that's assault and a step too far, but the essence of what he said was true. When people are allowed to challenge, ridicule, and deride political leaders, that's how you know you still have a free society. We should all be allowed to disagree with, insult, and mock politicians. We should be allowed to point out that Leo Varadkar sounds like he has a didgeridoo stuck in his larynx and do impressions of him announcing the budget. I'm Leo Varadkar, and we're going to be extending supports until the 5th of April. That's a good and healthy thing. That shows that the balance of power in society is where it should be, and it's only tyrants that would want to end or control that. Please like and share this video, and if you enjoyed it, please consider signing up for a monthly donation via the link on screen to help us produce more content like this. Alternative media like Gript needs all the assistance it can get, and every donation goes a long way. As always, thanks for watching.